So now that we know how to create queries, I want to go back into those queries and customize those and edit those so that we can add some criteria that will limit the record set even more. So for example, I have created this customer orders query, and you can see that I've added the 3 tables and I've pulled in the fields that I need from each table. So I created this in design view. So I just added the tables here and then double clicked, or you can drag and drop from each table the customers or the fields that I needed. So now what I want to do is it just shows the customer data, but maybe I want to pull out specific data. Since it's a query, you can pull it out in different ways. So if you want to narrow down this data in a specific way, you can. So notice I've got the customer information here, the customer name, the order information, the quantity, and so forth, the product ordered, the order date. So let's go back in and let's say I only want to show the orders for a specific order date. Okay, so if you look, your criteria have to come from the data. Okay, so if I want to show it for a specific order date, let's just say, for example, January the 20th of 2019. So if I wanted to say January 20th of 2019, I only want that particular order date. Maybe a customer's called and said that was the date of the order. So all you have to do is go to the criteria line of that field. Make sure that you go to the field where you're trying to limit the data. So in this case, it's the order date. So sometimes you accidentally will put that in another field and it will not work. So let's run that. And now you can see we're getting 3 that were placed on January 20th of 2019. So let's try another date. Now notice as we did that, I did not enter those number signs or the pound signs. Access does that for you when it recognizes a date. Okay, so let's try 3/24 of 2019. Okay, if I click outside of that, you can see that it adds those number signs. So I'll run it. So you can see that there are 10 that were ordered on the 24th. So let's say if I accidentally put this in the wrong field, maybe I put it in the order ID. Okay, if I run that, notice it's not recognizing that it's a date. That's because the order date is set up as a date data type. Okay, order ID is not, so it's not recognizing that as a date. So when we run it, we get no records in the record set. Okay, so sometimes that happens. Sometimes there's not one with that particular date, but in this case, it's because I put it in the incorrect place. Okay, so I've got these that were placed on the 24th. Okay, so let's go in and let's see any that were ordered that had a quantity of less than 100 and that were ordered on that same date. So if we put less than 100, if you put it on the same criteria line, that's like saying and. It was on the 24th of March and it's less than 100. Okay, notice if you have the or here, so I'll talk about that in just a second. So we want any on the 24th less than 100. Okay, so again the 24th and the quantity ordered was less than 100. Okay, so if I went in and said I wanted the ones on the 24th, but also or any that were less than 100. Okay, so if I run that, that's going to give me ones that were on the 24th, but I've got lots of other dates here, but it's because it's looking or the quantity was less than 100. Okay, so that's why it's pulling in more then. So you have to be careful that you get those on the same line if you want that to be an and. Okay, So let's go into a different query. Let's go into my product suppliers query. Okay, if we're looking at this, it shows for each product some specific information about each product, the category, whether or not it's discontinued, the cost of it, and as well as the supplier information. Okay, so let's go into our datasheet view, but look at the data we have here. The discontinued is a yes/no data type, so that means that it's a checkbox. If it's checked, it means yes. If it's not checked, it means no. So we can go into datasheet view, and let's just say we want all of the ones that have been discontinued. Okay, so again, the checkbox is if it's checked, it's yes. If it's not, it's no. So we just put the word yes there, and don't put quotation marks around it because it is the value of the checkbox in this case. Okay, it has to do with the data type. So let's run it, and you see that you are able to pull in only the ones that are discontinued. So this is similar to doing a filter in your tables, but this is much more powerful because the queries are able to pull in multiple table data at one time, and it can filter it on multiple fields. Okay, so let's go in. Let's just take that criteria out, and let's say we want for the category right here, let's say we want only those that are canned fruits and vegetables. Okay, now you can go into a query just like you can Excel, and you can increase that size. So it says canned fruits and vegetables, so it's recognizing that as two different things because it thinks I'm looking for canned fruits and vegetables. So that's not correct. You have to be careful about that. So let's change that. Okay, so let's look at canned fruits and vegetables. Okay, so we're going to run it, and I don't get any results. Why is that? So the way you can check it is, let's just take this out. And let's run that query again. Well, it's because I used the word and not the ampersand instead. So it has to be, again, it has to come from the data. It has to be exactly what is in your data. Okay, Access cannot convert the word and to an ampersand. It doesn't know those are the same. So it has to be exactly the same value that's in your data. So for your category, okay, so again, it's looking at that and, so we're going to have to be careful with that because Access is assuming things that it should not. So we're looking for canned fruits and vegetables. Okay, so it's still not recognizing it. So it does not like the value that we entered. Okay, so I believe I put in fruits. So let's try that again. And I'm going to type in the quotation marks there so that it does not think that that is two different words that I'm looking for. So let's run that. Now I've got it correct. So sometimes if you don't get the record set, it might be that there are no values in the record set that are equal to what you typed in, but make sure that the value you typed in is actually in the data set. Okay, now I could go back in and try this a little differently. I could say it contains the word canned. Okay, so it doesn't like that. So there's specific syntax in Access that you need to use, and it's called criteria. Okay, so you can't just type things in how you think it should sound. It's called criteria. So you can look online. There are different websites that will list query criteria for you. So, for example, this is kind of a cheat sheet on criteria that I have available. But you can go to different websites to see what kinds of criteria that you can use. So we can put in that it's like something, okay? So we can use what we call a wildcard, and it's an asterisk, and that means that it would be anything that includes that word, and the asterisk means there could be anything after it or anything before it. So in this one, it would include anything that had the word Korea in it, and it can have anything before it and anything after it. So that's what the asterisk means. Okay, so if you put it just before, it means that anything, it would contain anything before the word INA, or the letters INA. So it would be, for example, countries like China and Argentina. Okay, so the syntax for the criteria you have to be really careful about. You can't just say, it contains a certain word. You have to use the certain syntax. So let's try like and canned, and anything after the word canned. So we're going to use that asterisk as the wild card. So let's see if that will work. Okay, so in that case, we use the proper syntax. So it pulled in anything that had the word canned and anything after that. Okay. So you can do other types of criteria, and you can have multiple criteria, as I showed you. So if we look at our data, this is all of our data. So let's pull in the ones that were only for supplier F, okay? So we could do that a couple of different ways. We could put in supplier ID number 6, or we could just put in supplier F, okay? You don't have to use both. So if we just put in 6 for the supplier ID, it's going to give us 15 for the result, and it's showing only those that have a 6. So you could say, let's pull in the ones that have a 6 or a 2. Now you could do that a couple of different ways. So you can see it's got 6s and the 2s for each supplier there. So you could say it's a 6, or you could put the 2 on the other line because this is the OR line, right? So again, it's going to pull in the same records for that record set. Okay, so we can go in and delete those. So go in and play around with some queries and some criteria and get adjusted to, the types of syntax that you would use, and play around with those. It's fun. Sometimes things don't work the way you think they would, but you learn from that as you go through the process. So you'll learn more the more you practice. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about parameters in a different video.